Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're dropping right into the incredibly chaotic, war-torn streets of France during World War II. Just picture this for a second. You've got a young British soldier named Tommy, sprinting for his absolute life. Hitler's German army is advancing fast, just overpowering everything in their path. Tommy is dodging gunfire, he's exhausted, terrified, and desperate. He somehow manages to escape the immediate slaughter in the streets and finally bursts out onto the open sand of a massive beach. But relief doesn't come. Instead, he walks into a scene that is almost unimaginable in its scale and dread. What Tommy walks into is a total nightmare of logistics and survival. The soldiers on this beach have their backs literally to the sea. There is absolutely nowhere left to run. They are completely trapped between this relentless, advancing German army on the land and the cold, unforgiving ocean right in front of them. And as if that wasn't terrifying enough, the sky above them is roaring. German fighter planes are constantly swooping down, dropping bombs on these exposed men. It's a scene of utter desperation, where every single guy just wants to find a way back home.
Okay, let's dive into this number real quick, because it really sets the staggering stakes for our entire explainer today. We're not just talking about a few battalions stuck on the sand here. There were approximately 300,000 Allied soldiers stranded at Dunkirk. 300,000 men, exhausted, defeated, and basically sitting ducks on an open beach. The sheer volume of human lives hanging in the balance here is exactly what makes the events that follow so incredibly vital to the outcome of the war.
Section 1. Trapped on the beach. The desperate escape.
So, out on this chaotic beach, Tommy meets two other soldiers. A silent guy named Gibson, who is actually busy burying a fallen comrade when they meet, and another soldier named Alex. You can see the pure exhaustion in all of their eyes. They are physically and mentally drained from this constant threat of death. And their attempts to escape? They unfold in this terrifying, repeating sequence. First, they manage to sneak onto a medical hospital ship. But in the brutal reality of this war, even a hospital ship isn't safe. It gets attacked from the air and sunk, forcing them right back into the freezing water to swim for their lives. Next, they spot a grounded trawler abandoned on the beach. They sneak inside, hoping to use it as a lifeboat. The plan is agonizingly slow, though. They have to sit in the dark hull and literally wait for the high tide to arrive, just hoping the rising water will lift the heavy ship enough so they can float away.
But here is where the claustrophobia really sets in. While they're hiding in the dark, German soldiers on the beach, who have no idea Allied troops are hiding inside, start using the grounded ship for target practice. Bullets just start ripping through the metal hull. The guys inside can't fire back, right? Because that would completely give away their position. And remember that rising tide they were waiting for? Well, it arrives, but it starts pouring in through all those fresh bullet holes. The water rises faster and faster. The very ship they hoped would be their salvation literally begins to sink before it even leaves the shore.
Inside this sinking, pitch-black hull, tensions absolutely boil over. Alex accuses the silent Gibson of being a German spy, but Gibson finally speaks up, revealing a pretty tragic secret. He's not a spy at all. He is a French soldier. He had stripped a dead British soldier of his uniform because the British were prioritizing the evacuation of their own troops first. Gibson just wanted to survive. But in a completely heartbreaking twist of irony, as the water floods the hull and the men are desperately scrambling to escape, Gibson's foot gets tangled in the heavy chains of the ship. Despite fighting as hard as he can, he's trapped and he tragically drowns right there.
This brings us to a massive logistical nightmare. Seriously, how do you rescue an army when your warships can't even reach the shore? The water at Dunkirk was way too shallow for the massive British naval vessels to get close enough to the beach to actually load the men. So, if the Navy couldn't get to the 300,000 stranded soldiers, who on earth could?
Section 2. The Civilian Rescue Fleet. Ordinary Heroes.
So, the British Prime Minister issues this desperate call to action, essentially asking anyone with a civilian boat, fishing boats, pleasure yachts, ferries, you name it, to sail across the dangerous channel to Dunkirk. We follow one of these civilians, an older gentleman named Mr. Dawson. Instead of handing his boat over to the Navy, he set sail himself, taking along his teenage son Peter and a young local kid named George. George, by the way, just wanted to do something brave to get his picture in the local newspaper. Well, out on the open water, a really tragic micro-story unfolds on Mr. Dawson's small wooden boat. They spot a shipwreck and rescue a lone shivering soldier from the water. This guy is deeply traumatized, completely shell-shocked from his own narrow escape. When he realizes that Mr. Dawson is steering the boat back toward the living hell of Dunkirk, he panics. He demands they turn around. Mr. Dawson refuses. In this frantic state, the soldier tries to physically take control of the boat. During the scuffle, young George gets knocked down into the hull. He suffers a severe head injury that blinds him, and ultimately, it proves fatal. A boy who literally just wanted to help, caught in the crossfire of someone else's trauma.
A little later, the traumatized soldier, sitting quietly now, asks Peter if the boy he pushed is going to be okay. Peter knows George is dead, but in this incredibly profound moment of humanity and empathy, Peter looks at the broken soldier and chooses to lie. "He'll be fine," Peter says. He spares this traumatized man from the crushing, lifelong guilt of knowing his panic killed an innocent kid. It's a quiet but incredibly powerful moment of sacrifice right in the middle of all this chaos.
Section 3. The shield above, a ticking clock.
High overhead, it's a completely different kind of battle. British fighter pilots are desperately trying to protect the vulnerable men down below from the relentless German bombers. We follow one specific pilot named Farrier. Early on in his flight, his fuel gauge gets completely shattered during a dogfight, so he has absolutely no way of knowing exactly how much fuel he has left to make it back to England. Yet he makes a very conscious choice. As the minutes tick down, instead of turning back to save himself, he stays. He keeps engaging in these intense aerial dogfights, shooting down German bombers that are targeting the civilian boats. He's fighting the enemy, and he's fighting the ticking clock of his own empty gas tank.
The cost up in the air is brutal. Farrier starts with 2 wingmen. Both of them go down, though one is miraculously plucked from the ocean by none other than Mr. Dawson's boat. This leaves Farrier fighting entirely alone. And his ultimate sacrifice is pretty profound. He successfully shields the civilian boats, giving them the cover they need to rescue the soldiers, but his engine finally dies. Completely out of fuel, he glides in pure silence over the beach at Dunkirk, lands his plane on the sand, and is immediately captured by German soldiers. He literally traded his own freedom for the lives of the men below.
Section 4. Convergence, where land, sea, and air meet.
Because of Farrier's aerial cover, Mr. Dawson's vulnerable little wooden boat is actually able to navigate these treacherous, bomb-filled waters, dodging sinking military ships and huge slicks of burning oil, and his boat arrives exactly when it is needed most. Who do they pull out of the freezing oily water? Tommy and Alex, the 2 soldiers we've been following since the very beginning. The civilian fleet, protected by a solitary pilot up in the clouds, manages to do exactly what the massive Navy could not. They reach the men.
Section 5. Outcome and legacy, victory and tragedy.
And this brilliantly illustrates why this entire event is called a miracle. Going into this evacuation, the British government grimly estimated they might be able to save about 30,000 men. Instead, a staggering 335,000 soldiers were brought home. Now, the soldiers who returned, including Tommy and Alex, they actually felt a deep sense of shame. They thought they had failed their country by retreating. But when they pulled into the train stations back in England, people were handing them blankets, food, and beers. They were welcomed as heroes simply for surviving. Meanwhile, their commander bravely chose to stay behind on the beaches of Dunkirk to help evacuate the remaining French forces. Through a wild combination of civilian bravery, air support, and just sheer will, they pulled off the impossible.
And there's a really bittersweet resolution for our civilian heroes, too. Back home, George, the young boy who lost his life on Mr. Dawson's boat, actually gets the recognition he so desperately wanted. His photo and a story detailing his bravery are published posthumously in the local newspaper. He is remembered as a hero of the Dunkirk evacuation.
But before we wrap up, we really must look at another number, 3 million. It is a staggering, heartbreaking figure that requires us to just pause and reflect on the wider global scope of this war.
Our sources provide a vital historical footnote here that we need to impartially acknowledge. While Dunkirk was an undeniable, miraculous victory for the Allies, the broader war policies instituted by leaders like Winston Churchill and Adolf Hitler had devastating global consequences. Specifically, decisions regarding resource allocation during this time contributed directly to the Bengal famine in India. So while 335,000 soldiers were miraculously saved on the beaches of France, the ripple effects of those war policies led to the deaths of 3 million innocent civilians in India.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought for today's explainer. How does history remember triumph alongside devastating collateral loss? The Miracle of Dunkirk is an incredible testament to human resilience, bravery, and the astonishing lengths ordinary people will go to in order to save others. Yet it exists within this much larger, darker tapestry of a war that cost millions of innocent lives far, far from the front lines. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this complex, awe-inspiring, and tragic moment in history. Until next time, keep seeking to understand the full story.